We started this lesson by talking about what it means to have a promise, something that runs in the background that we then chain code after it has completed. We're now going to talk about a new or relatively new feature of JavaScript that allows us to make this code a little bit more simpler and perhaps more intuitive for us to understand. And it's a feature called Async Await. We have to do a lot of network related things in a row. We have a lot of nested promises and callbacks. For example, consider chaining requests. If I have to make an endpoint to a server, and then I request this endpoint and I want to use the results of this for another request, I have to use two .thens to handle this. But we don't have to use these many .thens which obfuscate and complicate our code if we instead use an async await pattern. The idea is that we're going to declare a function to be of type async, which means that it will be an asynchronous function, so JavaScript is aware that we can then use the await keyword, which is sort of like chaining everything that follows it in a big .then. Consider an example from mini project 3a and 3b, which is where you're going to take an image from a URL and you're going to convert it into a blob data type, write it to cloud storage, get the image download URL from where you're storing it, and then you're going to write it into a Cloud Firestore document, so that way you can always reference what specific object you're looking for. Now each step depends on the previous step, and each of these steps takes time to complete because you're waiting on Firebase to do things for you. In other words, you're waiting for each promise to be resolved. Consider the following code. This would be without using async await. We have a lot of nesting. If you notice, we have .thens throughout for snapshot, for download URL. We have a one at the end for actually finishing the social creation. And on first glance, there looks to be a lot of tabs, a lot of indentation, and it seems a little bit more complicated. But if we compare this to using async await, you can see that it seems a lot more intuitive. It's almost like we are simply waiting for things to get done because there's no reason not to. Now what's really useful is that we can actually declare this whole function to be of type async, and then we can call this somewhere else, or we can also await the result of an asynchronous function. In other words, we can start chaining this together and treat this like one larger promise-based object.